We are chatting today with Matt Edelman, who is a distinguished leader in the immersive media and gaming space and is currently the president and CCO of Super League. During Matt's tenure, he has driven 20x revenue growth for over 4 years and has also spearheaded multiple M&A transactions, overseen international expansion, and supported the company's IPO while building a truly enviable high performance team. Personally, while preparing for this podcast, I can truthfully say I have never been so entertained just reading someone's LinkedIn experience. What struck me is how often, Matt, you were on the cutting edge of what was happening in media during your various stints. The virtual Pam Anderson totally grabbed my attention. And that was decades ago. And really kind of cool, too. It was on a Palm Pilot, one of my all time favorite devices. Uh, I think it could give like the Apple and smartphones today a competition, actually. But anyway, really excited you could join us here today, Matt.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and appreciate the diligence in looking at my LinkedIn. Not many people get down to the Pam Anderson reference.
No, it was you should make a book. You should really write a book. I was like going through it all and like, this is really entertaining. So anyway, so obviously you have a rather illustrious resume, and we could easily spend several hours, if not more, just chatting about a few of your past roles. I do have to pick out a few, though, that jumped out at me. Let's start with your time at IMG, now Endeavor. Could you give our audience a brief overview of that experience? And please don't leave out the private jet ride with Larry David.
Well, okay, I'll save that for the end of the description. I had a really fortunate opportunity to be introduced to the people running, at the time, WME, and it was in advance of their opportunity to even bid for the acquisition of IMG. When I met them, I was running a different company. That company had pivoted to create a new product. The people running WME were interested in that new product. And that sort of formed the initial basis of the relationship. That migrated into an opportunity for me to start consulting for them. During that time, I built out a business plan related to some of the areas of their operation. They were not sure how they wanted to grow. The business plan was thankfully warmly received, but probably not with the best timing, in that about 3 weeks after there was a consideration of funding that business plan, WME won the auction and suddenly had the opportunity to spend $1.4 billion to acquire IMG. That put my business plan and I think several others off to the side, and they moved forward to try to close that deal. It was, I guess, turned out to be fortunate timing in the sense that the area I had been helping them explore turned out to be important for the purposes of growing IMG's live events business. And it was really about helping that part of what was going to be this new 3,000 person company, grow through digital. IMG had not invested much in digital. They had more than 300 live events around the world and were barely running social media accounts, weren't doing digital ticketing. They were not extending their live event sponsorships into digital platforms. They weren't creating content that had any special appeal to audiences across social networks and mobile applications. And so all of that was really greenfield territory that WME didn't have anybody internally to help build from scratch. And so right. I went into the company to really take that on, had a terrific several years, ended up getting involved in other parts of the operation, most notably the global marketing agency that had been part of IMG, focused largely on experiential marketing. they were increasingly interested in extending some of their capabilities for their clients into digital extensions, once again, of that live experiential practice. And so I was able to plug into that part of the global organization as well, which really gave me an incredible purview across so many parts of the business. And I was well supported by the people who had brought me in, which, were sort of top of the organization.
Right.
I think it would have been, if it had happened a year later, if I had been introduced a year later, everything would have been different. I probably wouldn't have been able to spend as much time with the CEO and president and COO and chief content officer. I probably would have been slotted in at a different, level in the company. And so it was really timing that made all the difference. And perhaps because of where I was slotted in, I did end up being able to hitch a ride once in a while on a private flight, and one in particular that was a cross-country flight. One of the passengers was Larry David, and that flight did frankly feel like I was in a 5.5-hour live episode of Curb. So
Curb Your Enthusiasm, yeah.
It was, and he was just a prince of a guy, and his authentic personality was right there, and we had a lot of very funny moments that were, again, they were organic, they were not manufactured, and made it all the better.
Oh, good story. I'm sure we could spend a whole hour just talking about your time there.
The problem is I would start doing my Larry David impressions and they wouldn't really hold up. And so I'm glad we're moving on.
Still could be entertaining. I saw you're with like comedy.com as well. So, but anyway, I did study, like I was chatting today with my daughter. My daughter is a huge Marvel fan, and I was kind of like dropping her off to the golf course and then rushing over here. And I was kind of explaining who I was going to be talking with. And I said, the first 6 months of his time with like Marvel, he had to like read like 30 years worth of like comics. It's like, how much fun is that?
I mean, it was just amazing. I was a comic book reader growing up, but I wasn't a collector. So I wasn't waiting at, the comic book store, the local comic book store at, 3:30 as soon as school ended for the latest shipment of, new issues to come out. But my grandparents would buy me comics. Then my parents started buying me comics. I went to camp and everybody had comics, and that was sort of the currency of summer camp. So everyone would bring their stash and trade, and I loved
trading. Yeah.
Oh, it was great, and it spanned all of the labels and characters at the time. But Marvel certainly stood out and were among my favorite characters. And so when I had the opportunity to go to Marvel, it was really when the company had decided to rebuild its entertainment division. This was well before Marvel started funding its own films and eventually television shows, and that precipitated the sale of the company to Disney. This was really before all of that was set in motion. And it was a remarkable way to sort of enter the entertainment business. I was walking, through, the restaurants in, Beverly Hills, and, people recognized me from a prior meeting, and they would call out and say, "Hey, Matt Marvel." I didn't have another last name. It didn't matter. Like I was the person who was carrying the Hulk in my back pocket. I was not, otherwise an individual, which was both weird but awesome. And
very cool, actually. Yes.
And yeah, I had to read 30 years of comic book history in as rapid a time frame as I could in order to be able to talk to writers and directors and studio executives and animators about all of these amazing stories and the mythology behind them.
That's super cool. It's like, and you were paid to do that, right?
I was paid to do that, and I had the coolest office on the planet. And to be honest, the little button on that story is ultimately I learned that I was not necessarily that skilled in creating compelling entertainment. I would read a script and I would give notes, and I just didn't have any idea if those notes were making the script better. I would look at the cut of an episode of an animated series and give, editing suggestions, but I really didn't know if my suggestions were making it any better. And that's a weird feeling when you love what you're being asked to do, but you're not sure if what you're doing is working. And ultimately, it just didn't feel like I had the right skill set to be successful in that part of kind of the creative world. I had gotten very involved in a lot of the sort of nascent business activities at Marvel. I was very lucky in that I was working for one of the C-level executives who brought me into other parts of the business, one of which was Marvel.com. That ended up sparking much more passion for me, other than the fact it was kind of fun to have my name in lights here and there, on the entertainment side. But as a result, I ended up helping to launch Marvel.com. I was one of the founding team members inside Marvel. There were a handful of us who were young enough that we were paying attention to this new thing called the internet. And we got Marvel.com launched. It was probably 1997, 98. The excitement I had about the .com experience inspired me to look for another place to go work, because Marvel wasn't really ready to invest in what was considered new media at the time. But I mention this also because if I hadn't left, the person who is still running Marvel's entertainment business probably wouldn't have been hired. And that's now 25 years ago, which means that Marvel fans worldwide who have seen incredible movies, I'm one of them, really have to thank me for leaving Marvel. Because if I hadn't left, this brilliant producer and storyteller wouldn't have come into the company and lasted 25 years and told amazing stories over these past decades. So that's my contribution to global Marvel fandom.
I love your honesty there. It's something you don't hear often in this industry. But so obviously you had a lot of experience. We just touched on two. There were many more. But so for our listeners who may not be familiar with Super League, obviously you took all of this experience and today you're now involved with Super League. Can you give us an overview of what Super League's key services and differentiators are in the market today?
Sure. Super League today, which is not how the company started, but today we really are one of the leading companies helping to turn gaming into an important media channel for brands and IP owners. Not from the standpoint of creating licensed games, but from the standpoint of helping brands and IP owners reach, engage with, and turn gamers into customers and audiences that care about those brands and IP in general. So we spend a lot of our energy bringing brands and IP owners into open gaming platforms like Roblox, Fortnite Creative, and even Minecraft. They have become very exciting environments where a brand can show up in a pretty authentic way in front of increasingly large communities of players. And companies like Super League are experts in making sure that occurs in a manner that both works for the community and helps bring business value to the brand. So we sort of sit in the middle, and some of that activity takes the form of agency type work where we are hired to build experiences, help market those experiences, help monetize those experiences. And other parts of our business are based on proprietary tech that we use to accomplish some of those same goals. And that technology is most widely deployed currently in Roblox and allows us to bring some solutions to marketers and advertisers and agencies and IP owners that other companies in the Roblox ecosystem aren't able to offer. And that's been super helpful to Super League's growth. And I would say we're just constantly getting better at what we do. We're keeping pace with the innovation on these platforms. We're watching what's happening both inside the companies that own these incredible spaces and are building technology to help creators of all types and shapes and sizes, to build more diverse and exciting experiences for the community. And we're also trying to drive.
To me, I just find the rate of change, like all the innovation happening, especially on Fortnite and Roblox, just to be amazing. It's hard to keep up with it. I do that. I think I'm doing it full time, and I sometimes I'll go to LinkedIn. It's like, oh my God, somebody's doing that. It's like, it's crazy. So a couple of weeks ago, I had participated on your podcast and with one of my business partners, Nodo. I meant to ask you at the time. The podcast is called BEAM, BEAM, which I find to be an interesting acronym. What does that mean actually for Super League?
That's a great question, and it's connected to what I was about to sort of say, which is we really focus on driving value for our partners inside these platforms, and we have realized over a period of time that to drive that value, there's a bit of a formulaic approach, and we put a moniker around that. And it's not that the approach is unique to activating inside open gaming platforms. And in fact, we have since realized it's a nice framework for marketers in general. But effectively, inside these platforms, B stands for build. You have to decide what you want your presence to be, and you're building it there. Once you know what you want to build, and especially, of course, once it exists, you get to the E stage, and that's engage. And the brand, with guidance that we try to provide to the best of our ability, we help a brand figure out what it means to engage an audience on these platforms. How does that engagement drive value, brand affinity, etc.? The next piece is amplification. So A in BEAM. Once you have started to engage an audience, how do you amplify that activity and what's happening so that you can bring more people into that experience and get larger audiences excited about the presence that you've built? And of course, M is ultimately quite important, and that is being able to measure the results of what you have created, the level of engagement that you're achieving, and whether or not your amplification is driving additional value. So BEAM is really that acronym for build, engage, amplify, measure.
Cool. Excellent. Glad I asked. I've been wondering since we had done that. So kind of getting back to activations on Roblox. I know Barbie's Dream House has been a massive success for Super League. How was it that Roblox players first ended up being able to spin tunes in Barbie's Dream House?
So the first appearance of Barbie in a permitted way on Roblox was through a program that Super League ran with Mattel and their agency Spark, and an existing popular experience on the platform already named Livetopia, which is published by a terrific company named Century Games.
Yep.
We helped Century Games create a partnership to build Barbie's Dream House inside Livetopia. And this was well before the Barbie movie, and actually since the Barbie movie, a different dedicated Barbie game has come out on the platform. But the first appearance of Barbie on Roblox in a licensed or approved manner was this dream house. And it was a spectacular part of the Livetopia game. And it allowed people, players to go in and hang out in the dream house and, go up and be part of the pool party, jump into the DJ area and spin tunes for the others who were, hanging out at the time. And the results were amazing. We had 60 million visits to the Barbie dream house in 30 days.
Wow.
We did a little math. And while we don't know this for sure, based on the box office results for the movie, which again was a little over a year later, the first 30 days of ticket sales were somewhere in the 70 to 75 million range. So 75 million tickets sold in 30 days. We had 60 million visits in this one space on Roblox. And the time spent was over 11 minutes per visit. And we thought about that and realized, well, the videos on Barbie's TikTok are about 1 minute long. And so the time spent on TikTok was about 10% in terms of watching a Barbie video as the time spent in Barbie's dream house on Roblox. And it was just an example of what's possible on the platform. And we were really grateful that we were able to work with both of those partners, Mattel on the one hand, Century Games on the other, to bring that to life.
Yeah, that's amazing. 60 million. Kudos to you guys on that for sure. With your extensive background, current and past, do you feel that these open gaming platforms are about to topple social media giants? You just mentioned like 11 minutes, right? Being spent on Barbie, which is a massive number. It's like, yeah. So like you said, an average video is going to be 15, 30 seconds. So 11 minutes is awesome.
It's a great question. I think the jury is still out in terms of whether there is going to be a changing of the guard in terms of where hundreds of millions and in some cases billions of people are hanging out on a monthly basis. The interesting part right now is the amount of time spent. Going back to the Barbie example, the average amount of time spent by a member of Gen Z on Roblox per day is 156 minutes. The average amount of time spent on TikTok is 96 minutes. Connected to that, if you add up the amount of time spent by a member of Gen Z on average per day between Roblox and Fortnite combined, that combination is actually higher than the amount of time spent on YouTube and TikTok combined. And so while you don't have the volume at this point yet on Roblox and Fortnite that you have on TikTok and YouTube, the time spent is extraordinary and in many ways dwarfs those two behemoth platforms. The question for Roblox and Fortnite Creative and other open gaming platforms and even traditional AAA games who are now starting to launch UGC components of their worlds and their franchises. The question is whether there is going to be enough social interactivity in addition to gameplay that will move some of the content sharing and social conversation that occurs on TikTok and Instagram into these spaces. It is clear that engagement is higher in 3D environments, and there is an enormous amount of real-time conversation happening during gameplay. And it is where friendships are actually more active, both with people you know and people you meet, than they are on TikTok or YouTube, which are really asynchronous social environments. But we don't know yet if the places where people spend time in Roblox and Fortnite Creative and others are going to blossom as true social spaces. My bet is they will. And the advancement of the tools that these companies provide to creators will continue to accelerate such that creators can try building exactly those kinds of social spaces with more flexibility, creativity, innovation, and mechanisms to drive communication and conversation. As those tools advance and as the creative community uses them, I think we will see increasing numbers of people there. Will they become as big as TikTok and YouTube? It's a pretty hard prediction to make.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to lean in that direction myself, but again, well, we'll have to see. I remember early days of Facebook, and like even talking to brands or whatever, and it's like, oh, that's for my kids. That's not for brands, that's for my kids, right? So I think, and in reading your LinkedIn profiles, you've always been kind of on the cutting edge with new media, et cetera. So I kind of feel like we'll be getting there. The numbers already with the amount of time being spent on these platforms, it's amazing. And I think it's going to probably increase rather than decrease.
Well, and the real
opinion,
question, right, is I think the real question is what happens as today's Gen Z ages up. So, is today's 18-year-old going to want to be socializing and communicating when they're using a device inside of a 3D environment in real time versus asynchronously scrolling through their feed and leaving comments and occasionally sending a DM? And I do think there's an argument to be made that somewhere at the intersection of, Discord and Snap and Roblox and Fortnite Creative, there is a user experience that is not yet complete, that will be complete on one or more of those platforms, that has a 3D foundation to it, but all of the real-time communication hooks that make it a preferred place for today's 18-year-old to be spending time when they're 25 to 30. But we'll see.
Yep. Totally agree. It's like they're not going to go backwards. They're going to want more excitement, more things to do, et cetera, and so forth on the platforms that they're used to. So Super League has earned more than its fair share of awards. Maybe from your position, maybe it hasn't won enough. I don't know. In fact, our recent Beyond Pixels, the Webby Award show, featured Super League's Josh Newman discussing a Super League award for Imagine Dragons. Question for you: is it true that you won a Clio by giving Hamilton characters superpowers? Was this from your Marvel days?
Yeah, I think it's a nice way to put it, and that is sort of what happened. We had a chance to speak with the team at Hamilton, which I have to reveal is run by my sister. She is not the creator of Hamilton, but she runs the company that produces Hamilton, and she had been looking at what might be a good strategy to make sure that Hamilton became a more familiar property to younger audiences. The show, the musical, has been immensely successful, most successful in the history of Broadway. But at a certain point, there's always the need to bring in new consumers, new audiences, new potential ticket buyers. And so They had been looking at gaming as a possible place where their IP could resonate with a younger audience. And we met for a drink one day when I was back in New York. I live in Santa Monica, but I was back in New York for business, and we just started talking more about it. She, in typical sibling fashion, really didn't have an understanding of what I do for a living. And so I got to explain it a little bit, led to some wonderful conversations between our teams. And ultimately, they trusted us to bring Hamilton as an intellectual property into Roblox. We took advantage of both interesting gameplay mechanics inside Roblox, and also were able to really honor the way that Hamilton was created for Broadway. We were true to sort of the environments that were created on stage in the different sets during the story of the show. And we leaned into what made the show really stand out and become a global phenomenon, and that is the music. And what we did inside the game was allowed the hero of the game, you, playing as the hero, and we allowed you to assemble a collection of authentic characters from the story of Hamilton in the show, and you could then each of those characters had an offensive ability, and that was basically connected to the songs that those characters performed in the musical. And that offensive capability was exhibited through effectively musical notes. And those musical notes would emanate from your characters and help defeat the redcoats who were in your way. And so
that's cool.
By doing that, you could progress from level to level. And so, yes, the Hamilton characters sort of did have superpowers. We were, we were blessed to win a Clio for that experience, and got a lot of terrific attention. And it, at the time, was really a standout experience on the platform.
Oh, and all in the family Clio then. Very good.
Absolutely.
Great story.
Absolutely. Yes. Brother, sister, team worked out.
That's cool. That's quite cool. That's a good story. I love that. It's amazing to me right now how open UGC gaming platforms are exploding. If you look at the numbers, like from Roblox 3-4 years ago and now, it's amazing. But specifically, do you see where there is now a new creator class emerging through them?
That's a good question, and the answer is absolutely. So if you go back probably at least 5 years ago, maybe 6 or 7, and anybody asked the question, who are the creators on digital platforms? The answer was invariably about people creating video content. And it was video content on YouTube or Instagram, eventually TikTok. Even initially Facebook. The creator class were influencers, and they were influential because of the content they created. They were influential because of their personalities. And in most cases, it was because that personality was on camera as part of the content experience that people were consuming. Fast forward to today, and there is an entirely new type of creator who doesn't care about being on camera, who doesn't want you to get to know their personality, and is inspired entirely by the ability to bring fantastical experiences to life in a gaming setting. And that is the current creator class that is, from just the numbers, the fastest growing creator class across digital platforms. And it is a creator class that we have no idea what they will create over the next decade. It's not going to be it's unlikely to be that they are going to be the next filmmakers, the next, TV show creators. They are masters of digital 3D creation and understand gamification. They understand in-game economies. They understand character design, and they use 3D engines as their creation tools. And to see what they are building, in addition to perhaps continuing to build Roblox games for as long as it's interesting to them, is pretty scintillating. Like, what is today's what are today's top 10 creators on Roblox going to be doing in 10 years, in addition to whatever they still may be doing on Roblox? It'll be very different from what today's, call it 30 to 35-year-olds who started on YouTube as creators are doing today. And so I love where we are in this, new phase of creativity and a new roster of creators who've come to life and are, really capturing enormous amounts of audience attention and consumer interest.
Yeah, it's such a fun space to be in. I think primarily for what you're just talking about, and to me, what's amazing is like you talk to the average person on the street or whatever, they still have no idea that there's so many people doing this. So we're early days, but there's so much like fabulous content being created, and you know, to me, we're like here, and it's going to go there. So it's so much fun to watch and see where it goes. Um, so the obviously the if you're looking at Roblox, Minecraft, Fortnite, the audience is primarily Gen Z and Gen A. Um, where do you see millennials fitting in, especially from the standpoint of maybe advertising on some of these platforms?
So it's interesting. The millennials, that was the first generation that grew up with multiplayer games available to them through this new digital device called a smartphone. But they didn't have it when they were born. And so they weren't, I think of millennials as probably, I think you have to think of them as being not quite digital natives, but very close compared to Gen Z, who are, digital natives. And then Gen A, it's not even a word worth using. There is no such thing as digital. Everything is just one, space because it's so interconnected.
Yep.
But the fact that millennials did experience multiplayer gaming in their teens and when they were in college or in their 20s, they are now on the precipice of becoming the lead executives, initially probably on the marketing side, just because of age. Usually the heads of marketing are maybe a little bit younger than, the next level up as a president or CEO of an organization. And as soon as millennials, which will happen over the next 3 to 5 years, become the heads of marketing, the CMOs of some of the most incredible brand-based companies in the world, I think you're going to see a migration of ad dollars into gaming because they have a very strong and organic understanding of the value of gaming platforms and the possibilities that exist in a 3D environment to create a relationship with the people who are spending time there. I think, unfortunately, as a member of Gen X, very few of the CMOs and the CEOs and the presidents of today's companies who are more likely to be Gen X than millennials. I don't think Gen X gets it. I don't think that as a generation we get the impact of gaming and what it means to be spending time interacting and being social in a 3D space. And so I really do think the generational shift will change the way that marketing budgets are allocated.
That's a really interesting perspective. I hadn't thought about that in much detail, but that's a really interesting analogy. So yeah, it's going to be fun to watch it. And I concur. Gen X, maybe 20% get it, maybe on the high side there, but the majority don't. So that'll be an interesting transition. So. A couple of quick questions in closing. First,
sure, of course.
What were the life-size high-chew snacks doing in a Fortnite map?
We had so much fun with that program. Look, Fortnite Creative offers different types of opportunities for brands than Roblox, and so when brands come to us and they're interested in being in one of these platforms, often the objectives that they have will determine how our team goes about recommending their strategy. And Roblox is more open in terms of its policies and has a more formal approach to working with brands than Epic currently does with UEFN. But the good news is UEFN does make it possible for brands to show up on the platform in at least some ways that can be meaningful and rewarding in terms of satisfying a brand's objective and bringing ROI based on the budget. And in this case, we helped put together a partnership between the creator of a popular Fortnite creative map and Haichu. And the creative approach was to have essentially life-sized Haichu products in the map and, being part of the gameplay experience, which, I certainly never would have thought of. Thankfully, a couple of our team members, and most importantly, the creators of the map, had this inspiration, and Haichu loved it, and it was a very successful program.
It was very. I checked it out. It was like very, very cool. I must say. Next question: how long does it take to give away 130,000 burritos?
That's one of our favorite case studies. You mentioned, I guess, in my bio that I've overseen a number of acquisitions for Super League. One of the companies that we acquired is a Roblox development studio that shortly before we acquired them had built a really fun Roblox experience for Chipotle that allowed players on the platform to go in and eventually roll their own virtual burrito. And once they completed the tasks in that experience, there was a code that they could use to redeem a free burrito in the Chipotle mobile app, a free real world burrito, not a virtual burrito. And we gave out 130,000 codes in 30 minutes. That's how quickly the Roblox community sparked to that opportunity and flooded the experience. In fact, at the time, it was so much activity that Roblox broke for like 5 minutes. Like it went down because of that specific program. And it ended up being the single largest day of new mobile app downloads in Chipotle's history, and the second largest day of food orders through their mobile app in the company's history. And so the answer to your question is 130,000 free burrito codes were given out in 30 minutes. And we're, getting close to some partnerships that we think may even break that record.
Cool. Good luck to you on that. That's awesome. That's quite cool. Okay, last question. Anything new and exciting that Super League is working on that you would like to mention? I know sometimes you're like, okay, this is under wraps. We're not ready to announce it yet, but anything that you can mention.
Well, I can tell you, given that, we're talking on the day when we're talking, and, the release this episode will come out a couple weeks later. By the time this is out in the public, it will have been more openly shared that Super League is building and has launched the official experience for the Olympics in partnership with the IOC and Visa. And so on Roblox, you'll be able to go, or you can go to Olympic World. And we are excited about, what we've created. It's been a long process of collaboration between, a really terrific group of people, and including an agent named Evergame, who were, intimately involved and great partners of ours. And ultimately, we think it will be a big event on Roblox, of course, tied to the, biggest sporting event and one of the most important cultural events of the year.
That's huge. It's so funny that you mentioned that. I was when I was in the car today with my daughter. She said, "Are you going to be like watching the Olympics?" I said, "Oh yeah, I'll watch some of it." But then it was like afterwards, I'm like, you know what? I haven't seen anything on Roblox. It's like the Olympics would be like so perfect, right? It's like, how come I haven't heard or seen anything? So it's like, it's so awesome that you mentioned that, and congratulations. That's going to be
Thank you.
huge. I'm,
No,
I'm
it's
really looking forward to.
we think it'll be a really fun place for the Roblox community and really on a global scale. It is, Olympic world for everybody in the world.
That's so cool. So congratulations on that. And again, Matt, thanks so much for joining us today and sharing your insights. And I really do hope you're planning to write a book at some point. And
Well, I'll think
I'll
about that. Thank
definitely
you.
be one of the first purchasers. So, uh,
Excellent.
so if someone's listening in and they want to contact you, Super League, how can they reach out?
LinkedIn is great, but I'm pretty open with my contact info. So it's matt.edelman@superleague.com.
All right, cool. Again, thank you so much, Matt. Have a great
Thank
rest
you.
of the day.
Really appreciate it.
Take care.